Okay, so I was at work. What day is it today? Today's Wednesday. So it was last week Friday. So this literally just happened recently. And my manager ran to me. I was on the shop floor. So she ran to me and says, I need you to help me to serve a customer. And so I'm thinking she's an elderly lady and my manager is busy. So maybe she doesn't know how to use the tills, because we don't have any of the sit down tills. They're all the machine ones. And so there was this gentleman just stood in front of me and gave me a sandwich and a drink and said, can you buy these for me? He's the one that my manager wanted to help. So I'm thinking, but this is an able-bodied person. Why does he need my help? And then I could smell him. Within 2-3 minutes, this waft of just unwashed flesh hit my nose. I'm thinking, she stitched me up. And so I'm walking to the counter now and I scan the things for him. I'm trying to have like a little chit chat. I'm trying to hold my breath at the same time. I scan through. He gives me a crisp £10 note. And then I noticed that his feet, Now he was a white gentleman, but his feet were almost black. And so I realized this guy is probably homeless. Where he got the money from, I don't know. He buys the drink, he buys the sandwich. And as soon as the money went through and he had the receipt in his hand, he didn't even wait to leave the shop floor. He opened up the sandwich to eat it straight away. Now, as soon as he done that, the 2 sandwiches that he had fell onto the floor. And I'm not talking about sideways. I'm talking about fell onto the floor open, a piece of tomato there, a piece of lettuce there. And I'm thinking, okay, this has happened before. What we usually do is say to the customer, oh, sorry, sir, let me go and get you another one. We then scan the one he's dropped as waste and we give him a fresh one. That's customer service. Before I could even get the words out to say those words, he had scooped up all of the elements of the sandwich, put it back together and started eating it right in front of me. I was so shocked I couldn't hide it. I said, oh, on the shop floor. And he just looked at me like, this is something I do on a regular basis. And he walked out of the shop, drank his drink, and I never saw him again. And I'm thinking, the reason why I was so repelled against that, because I know some of you got a 5-second rule if you drop something, if it's not, I know that, but for me, I just can't do it. There's what you call standards. My children always wash their hands before they eat. Standard. It's something that we've put into them, because if I don't tell them that, they won't wash their hands. And so as they were growing up, now you see it. If Renee has a spoon, if she drops it on the floor, even if it's for 2 seconds, she'll immediately go and put it into the sink and go and find another one. We've put that in them. They brush their teeth before they go to bed. If they drop food on the floor, they will put it straight into the bin. And, sometimes kids will drop a sweet and they just look at you like, what are you saying? It's only been a few seconds, but there's standards there. And this is because they live in my house. And so my principles and my standards become my children's principles and my children's standards. So if I could put it up on a wall somewhere in the home, I would say something like, Bayais don't eat from the floor. Because the Father has set standards, and those standards are not supposed to be restrictive to make my children feel like they've got no room to do what they want. They are protective standards and they shape their character. I want you to imagine for a moment if you had a friend that's your age and you're out eating somewhere on a picnic, he drops or she drops a piece of chicken, she picks it up, dusts off all of the grass and the little bits of stones and continues to eat it. You would look at them differently from that day on. I don't care if it's your best friend from when you were 5. You'd be like, nah, something isn't right, because we have standards. They shape our character. The way people look at us, the way we deal with life, the way we deal with others, sometimes hinges on this issue of standards. I was prepared to get this man a new sandwich, but his standards were totally different. He was like, I'm not willing to wait. He was so hungry, he wouldn't wait an extra 60 seconds. That's all it would have taken for me to say, let me just grab this for you. And he could have just opened it and ate it in the shop. But his desires were so strong that it superseded any standards that he might have had. And this is what life is like sometimes, when we want something so bad that we are not willing to wait. To be successful in life, your standards have to be stronger than your desires. Let's say that again. If you want to be successful in life, whatever your standards are, they have to be stronger than the desires inside of you, because if your life is led by your desires and not your standards, you are not going to be successful in life. If you belong to God, He's your Father, and in His home He has something on the wall that says, these are our standards. This is how I expect my children to live and conduct themselves. If indeed you belong to God, you care about what He says, God teaches us standards, and He is more committed to our destiny than He is to our desires. My children, again, they don't like brushing their teeth. And I'm so glad they're not here, because Benjamin would have been looking around like, you can't see that in front of everyone. But sometimes it's a battle just to get them to shower and to brush their teeth. And so I could be one of those modern fathers to say, well, you know what, let the children do what they want to. If you don't want it, I don't want to force you and then give you mental damage when all of this nonsense. It's like, hey, listen, I don't care what your desires are. Your destiny is a destiny of shiny teeth. Your destiny is totally different from mine. I had no standards when it came to sweets when I was growing up. That's why I have this filling here and this tooth missing there. I don't want that for you. So your desires don't mean much in this arena. I want your destiny to mean much more. And this is what God wants. He wants you to have a destiny over any desires, and we'll speak about that. Genesis chapter 29, verse 18 to 20. The Bible says Jacob loved Rachel. This is Jacob. He's living at his uncle's place, his long distance uncle, and he has his uncle has two daughters, Rachel and Leah. So he's now living with his uncle, and he's interacting with Rachel, interacting with Leah, and he fell in love, or he loved Rachel. So he wanted to do the right thing. So he said to the father, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. In other words, I want to marry your daughter, but there is a standard I'm going to set on myself. I'm going to work for her for 7 years before I can marry her. And the father said, fantastic. It's better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love that he had for her. Jacob loved Rachel, and love is an emotion. He chose to entertain that emotion. And Laban wanted his, back then, if you were a woman in that kind of society, if you did not get married, it would not go well for you. Because men would provide certain things in that societal norm that would make sure that you're well taken care of. And so every father would want his daughter to be married. And so Laban loves this girl. The father has a desire that this girl is married, but they both had standards. You are not getting my daughter unless you prove yourself, work 7 years. And Jacob himself had a standard. I'm not just going to jump into the bandwagon with what everyone else is doing. I love this girl, and so therefore I am willing to do the hard work. She must have been walking around the house listening to these two men talk, and something inside of her say, you know what, I'm worth something. I'm valued. My dad isn't just selling me off for cheap, and this man, he's willing to work 7 years for me. Who am I that anyone would labor for 7 years unpaid just for me? It must have given us some dignity. There's a story in the Bible where this man opens up his home to a priest and his concubine. He brings them into his home. It's almost like the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then he was in the tribe of Benjamin. They lived in that area, the Benjamites. In the night, they came knocking at the door, and they said, we saw you bring in a priest and his concubine. We want the priest. You send him out so that we may have our way with him. And the man that lived in the house said, no, don't do this. Instead, take his concubine or my daughter. So think about that. What would have that girl been listening to and thinking about her own self-worth and value when her father said those words? Here's a father that says, my daughter is worth something. My daughter isn't cheap. You're going to have to jump through some hoops. This is a picture of a dad meeting the boyfriend of his daughter the first time. And when he walks into the room, he makes sure that that young man sees him washing his machine gun or his shotgun. I want you to see that what you have in your possession is precious to me. You messed that around, but we're living in a generation now where a lot of young girls and young boys, they don't have that. They're not having value and worth placed on them by their fathers because their fathers are simply not there. Or they are there, but they're pushing their daughters and their sons out into the world and saying, listen, let the culture do what it wants with my children. But these guys had standards. So what is it that people desire? We want companionship. Most people want to be, they don't want to be alone. They want companionship. We want love, we want sex, and we want security. And for some people, you want children. These are normal desires, and they're good desires. We were not made to be alone. We were made to be in community, to experience and to give and receive love. Sex is a good thing. To have security in your home, to have children. All of these are legitimate desires. But if you don't have standards to get those desires, you and I will chase after these legitimate desires and do anything to get it. And then you end up cheated in life. There are women that give men the benefits of marriage without the commitment of marriage. You don't have to commit to me. You don't have to stand and make vows. You don't have to, we don't have to have our family members sitting. I'm going to give you what only a wife should give to a husband to you for free, without any other commitment. And we also have men who run away from biblical manhood and responsibilities just so they can chase sex. Think about it this way. The world is eating off the floor when it comes to relationships with disastrous results. You know, I told you that story, and I'm sure you're imagining this man scooping up bits of a sandwich and stuffing in his mouth, and everything within you was like, nah, that could never be. But in terms of relationships, when you walk out these doors, there are people out there that are scooping and eating relationships off the floor like they have no standards. You know, we should never look to the culture for relationship norms. If you're getting your relationship advice from TikTok, Love Island, people try and get relationship advice and ideas from YouTube, Instagram, the Kardashians, your own past, your own experiences, your friends, your feelings, etc., etc., etc. And if that's you, what you're literally doing is you're picking up things off the floor. And you're stuffing it into your mouth, and that is not how relationships work. It's an issue of value. In Jamaica, you had slavery, and what the slave owners would do is they would give their slaves all of the bits of the cow that they don't want. They would give their slaves the foot of the cow, the tail of the cow, the entrails, so the liver and tripe. They would give them all these things, the head, and that's what the slaves were made to eat. And so, you know, look, they're like, hey, listen, man, you're going to give it to me. I'm going to chop it up. I'm going to season that thing, and I'm going to make it good. And so that became the cultural norm. And so
oxtail was considered a poor man's food in the islands and in Jamaica. Oxtails is considered offal, which is the less desirable part of the cattle. So a lot of butchers and a lot of plantation owners would prefer to go with higher end cuts in the meats because oxtails would just take too long to cook and it was just considered a waste. But the working man, the poor man, will find many ways to use the oxtails and turn it into a delicacy. It has become very expensive, almost unaffordable, but people love it, you know, and there's a demand for it. They get it with their rasta pasta, they get it with their rice and peas, they get it with their vegetables.
Well, when Pastor Jay Nembard went to be a missionary in Jamaica, he said that you could not afford to buy oxtail. It's quite easy to buy a T-bone steak and all these kind of things, but because of the value of all of the things I mentioned that are not wanted, because they value it so high, it's way more expensive than the things that people in the West would love. Because value is not the worth of something. Value is what worth you put on that something. Are you with me? So a diamond could be worth nothing to you because it doesn't mean anything to you. For someone else, it could mean everything. Value is subjective. It's inside of you. And so what we're going to explore now is 3 areas where if you have values, if you have standards, if you have principles in these areas, they will greatly help you navigate this issue called relationship and dating. Because your standards reveal what you value.